Welcome to the Miscarriage Rebellion. I am Stacey June Lewis, lead of the Pink Elephant Support Network group counselling program, Grief and Grace. And along with Pink Elephant's co-founder and CEO Sam Payne, through this podcast we will share the stories of many Australians who have lost their babies to early pregnancy loss. With evidence and empathy, we unpack the shame, blame and stigma and lack of support that they may face. This is a loss that has been silenced for far too long, and we deserve better. We are here to normalise the conversation and to make lasting change. Welcome back to another episode of the Miscarriage Rebellion. I'm so thrilled to be joined by one of our own today. Samantha joins us as a peer support coordinator, but just as importantly, she comes to that role with very in-depth lived experience. Welcome, Samantha. We're so happy to have you on the show.
What a privilege. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks.
Oh, that's so nice. And it's such a big journey to get to the word privilege. I mean, I know that you and I could relate to being in the trenches of this experience, and the word privilege and, seeing any form of light at the end of the tunnel can be something quite challenging for somebody listening that's right in the edge of it. But it is so nice to share that with you in those elements that you feel like have become an honor and become something. I wouldn't say the word positive, but you have made such an impact from the things that you have experienced. So let's just start there a little bit. What was the turning point for you? And we'll get into your lived experience, but what was the turning point for you where you decided you wanted to find the jewel in it, or you wanted to find something, some impact from what you had gone through?
I guess my first thing is a lot of support first and foremost. I think about like the amount of psychological sessions, the counseling sessions. It took me some time to actually accept that grief wasn't necessarily a negative thing. It was probably the only thing that connected me to my beautiful babies that I lost. And the moments that I started accepting grief, I started realizing that there's such positivity, or there's potential purpose behind what happened. And maybe I'm phrasing it wrong. It's not necessarily purpose behind what we've done. It's more like I need to find purpose about what happened. I can't just sit here and accept that I've lost babies, and it obviously changed my life. So let's find a silver lining behind this, and let's actually help people that have gone through this process and make their lives a little bit easier, because it wasn't so easy for me. And if I had the support that I'm hoping that I provide other people, I'm sure I would have been better off, on the longer term, or the short term probably is more.
Yeah, and I think both of us, I should say, are getting a little wordy around the terms like, positivity and, the gifts of it, because it is one of those things that I'm sure I know in the absolute depths of it, that is so far from where you could possibly imagine yourself. So I think the reason that we kind of dance around that a little bit is to try and really honor and be sensitive to the fact that that is not expected of people, and it's not necessarily what it looks like. But also I think it is important, and we've covered this in season 2, that hope and these elements of coming out of that time are possible, and they do happen. So when you, and I thank you so much for sharing that comes from support. Like, as a therapist, it's very nice for people to admit that they're actually in therapy. There's many times I see people up the street that are looking the other way, pretending that I don't exist, and it's not about me, but it's more about the process, in that these things do actually support, they do move you from one, well, we hope they move you from one place to the next. But let us then turn back to where this journey started for you. We've kind of jumped to the end. Can you tell us a little bit about where this began?
Yeah, of course. And I hopefully don't bore people with my story, because it was a bit of a long story, and it does end in a happy story, which I know not many people have the opportunity to be able to talk about either. So I want to really acknowledge that I'm one of the fortunate ones that actually have a beautiful rainbow baby at the end. But I can imagine there's quite a few listeners that are probably hopeful that
On
they'll
their
get
way.
their rainbow
Yeah.
baby
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah.
But I went through about a 5-year journey with IVF. Lots of disappointment through that process. And of course, I'm on this podcast because I had many losses as well. So my first loss was probably the worst that probably could have ever happened, was a termination because of medical reasons. And then my second one was in relation to just a miscarriage. And when I think back to that experience, I mean, it was like firstly not being able to fall pregnant, and then having to go through fertility treatments and understanding that process, because it's no one really explains to you how that process actually works. You kind of just live it and hope for the best. And then when we were finally pregnant, I thought, oh, well, that's done. Fertility specialist done. I moved on to the OB. Now I can actually live our lives and not have to worry about these medical things that I had to deal with all the injections and all that wonderful stuff that you do when you're in IVF. And then, and don't get me wrong, I was relatively anxious because, like any first time mum is, they're just really worried about what could potentially happen. And then 18 weeks hit, and I woke up and I thought my water broke, which I was shocked. I didn't understand how that would be. I remember going to the bathroom and I was just like, this pee does not feel like a normal bathroom visit. It just kept going and going and going. And I just thought, like, I just remember a close friend of mine describing when her water broke, and it just kind of gave me this flash of like, oh, what's just happened? And I remember calling the hospital, and, obviously the hospital did their due diligence and thought they were giving me the best advice possible. But when I called them, the nurse on the other line mentioned, like, that's impossible. Like, you cannot have your water break at this stage. You might be just a bit incontinent. So how about you just pop on a pad, see how you go, and call us back in the next couple of hours. And I think the hardest part about this whole process is that you, as a mum, you kind of blame yourself about the things that you did at that stage. I really wish that I advocated for myself and say, I'm very sure that my water broke, but I'm in a little bit of denial at this stage, where I was kind of sitting there going, no, maybe I'm just incontinent because I don't want anything bad to happen to my baby. So I'm just going to follow what the medical professionals have told me, and I'm just going to pretend like it's not happening. And then
Or just follow the advice, really.
right? So I remember calling them a couple of hours later, being like, I'm just not sure. And they're like, look, keep going, see how you go. Like, they told me to do all these X and Y things to needed to do. And then I remember calling them the next day being like, I'm pretty sure that this is a water break, because it just can't be like this water's just, I'm just constant. And I called my doctor, and my doctor said, hey, come in tomorrow, we'll do a scan and we'll figure out what's going on. And little did I know that that was going to be probably the worst week of my life. I thought, and it's so funny because when you're in that situation, I just thought, like, oh, the medical professionals will just fix everything. It's no problems. Everything's going to be okay. And then I remember my doctor just told us to go get an ultrasound at the hospital, at the local hospital, just the hospital down the road. We got an ultrasound. I remember my husband was really anxious because the sonographer comes back in and just says, I just need you to go back to your doctor. Your doctor's advised to go back. And I thought, oh, this is great. The doctor just wants to tell me that everything's okay and everything's going to be fine. And my husband was like, I don't think this is bad. Like, this is good news, honey. Like, I really need you to start preparing yourself that something might be bad. And I was just in denial. I was like, no, my baby will not be leaving me. This is fine. This is going to be okay. And when the doctor, and good on her for being so straight with us, she's like, this is my job to give you good news and bad news. And unfortunately, I'm here to deliver some really terrible news. And I think to myself, like, I didn't expect I was going to cry, but I just recalling back to that, I just remember the words that came out of her mouth and saying, you need to make a decision. How about let's admit you to the hospital, go home, get yourself a little overnight bag. You're probably going to be in the hospital for a couple of days, so just prepare yourself for that. We're going to put you straight on antibiotics because there could be some sort of infection that might risk your life. And at this point, I was thinking it was to save the baby. So I was like, yeah, of course we'll go straight to the hospital, all that stuff. Um, and then at the hospital, they did another confirmation scan, and they said, look, right now the prognosis is if your baby survives, they will be severely disabled. Quality of life is close to none. So either you can just let yourself, if the baby wants to survive, you have the choice to continue on the pregnancy, or you can go with the really tough decision of doing a termination because of the severity of his sickness. And my husband and I had a very clear goal when it came to our child, and it was quality. Quality of life is so important to us. So we were pretty level-headed when it came to the decision. Like, we thought, like, oh, this is the right decision. We'll fall pregnant again. We'll be okay. And yeah, I think in the hospital, I was focused on the task. The next task to survive this hospital visit. Anyway, so everybody was very much like, "You're handling this very well. I'm very surprised." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I understand what we need to do." And I don't know, I was still in denial that we're going to save this baby. I had no idea what was going on. And then the moment we were rushed into, like they did the process to get us started to eventually labor and stuff. It wasn't until I was pushing out this baby that I started realizing this is, and like, I don't know if I can swear, but it was the shittest moment like I could possibly imagine in my life. And I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. This is just not fair. And I remember the midwife after we delivered said, "I just want to say that really bad things happen to really good people. So don't think that this is your fault. You guys did nothing wrong. It's just really shit circumstance." And she was the one that encouraged us to meet our baby, because initially we're like, we don't think we can emotionally handle it. And we had the opportunity to be able to hold him and spend some time with him. And it was a beautiful little moment. And we went home, and then the emptiness really started to flood in. It really felt empty. And the grief started to rush in to say, this actually just happened. Like, not even a week ago. Like, it all happened. Saturday was when my water broke, and then Thursday was when we delivered our little one. So it was horrific.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I think, when you were saying you're kind of, I think I can actually observe in you, there's still a little bit of shock when you talk about the shock, when you were saying, I wasn't thinking this, or I was, because you were literally in shock. There's an element of it not being able to be comprehensible for a reason, right? It protects us, that shock, so we can kind of find ways to process the unfathomable. And so when you say you went home and the emptiness began, from a peer support coordinator perspective now, looking back at that time, what do you observe about the supports, or unfortunately the lack of, that you were given to deal with what you had just gone through, which is losing your baby?
Look, I think I was one of the fortunate ones, because the hospital that I stayed at offered me three psychology sessions with a perinatal psychologist for free. So the hospital was going to cover those sessions for me. And I don't think I would have I don't think I would have done that on my own. And I'm thankful that
So
they
they had
turned
to
around
offer
and
it to you rather than you ask for it. Yeah, okay. It's a really
I
good
don't know.
point.
I not that I think I can handle it. It's just I always have. I think there's an inner pride that you can manage, right? Like, you don't need the support. I should be
And
fine.
also, you're grieving. Like, you kind of, as you've mentioned, you're not sure what day it is. Like, you've come home. Like, it's not necessary. Like, we really do want to get to a point where systems are holding us, not that we have to kind of advocate and navigate and fight for all the time. Like, in a moment like that, we know that when we lose elderly members, or we're in, you're at home, people are bringing you food. Like, you're not getting up, like, and requesting and project managing your support necessarily. So yeah, it's understandable, and that is a really good point of it kind of being presented to you as a different type of thing than actually having it just accessible to you if you want it.
And look, it was the best thing that happened to me, because it actually really started to allow me to accept well, accept is not the right word, but it just made me confront the issue that I was experiencing. I was in denial. As much as I felt the emptiness, I wasn't accepting what was actually happening. Who could accept what was happening? It's not fair. How could we go through all this process to fall pregnant and then be told, no, you can't have this anymore, even though you were trying really hard to make sure it. And like, the thing that really frustrated me throughout the whole process is, we kind of go through life being told, if you try really hard and you follow the rules and you do the right thing, you'll get what you want. And like, I followed the like pregnancy food journals. I made sure that I wasn't exposed to anything. Like, I was following it to a T. So the moment I was told that I somehow got some sort of infection that could have promoted like a premature rupture of membranes, I just didn't understand. Like, I followed all the rules. I did everything right. Like, how did this happen? But I'm digressing from your question. From support point of view, I was relatively lucky, and I think I probably wish I reached out for more support. when family called me, I mean, I was devastated. I cried, but I really was trying to be quite stoic because I don't know. I think a lot of people, it depends on your personality, actually. I shouldn't say everybody's like this, but I come from a space I support other people. I like to help others. And I always put my own feelings on the back burner. So I can imagine how awkward it would have been for someone to call me to say, I'm so sorry for your loss, or whatever the conversation they were having with me. And for me, like, to accept that, I just was like, no, this would be really hard for you too. Oh my God. I really want to slap myself when I think about what I was doing back then.
But sometimes as well, Samantha, like you want to be yourself. Like people say, "Oh my God, you need to receive. You have to do all of these things." And yeah, sure, that's for a long planned journey of self care and therapy. But in that acute time, I think a lot of women what I hear you're describing as well is you're wanting to feel at least a little bit familiar with who you were before all of this as well. Like to kind of then all of a sudden start to be vulnerable and move into a place where you're not familiar with is already then another thing you need to kind of navigate in an already kind of traumatic experience of unknowns and lack of control and all of these elements. So I think often we can also, these ideal scenarios about what we do and how we receive care can also be unuseful and really unhealthy for us to expect ourselves to be moving into these ideal versions, because it's survival at this point, right?
I think you're right. And equally, when you experience loss, I think everybody just assumes you're going to know what to say or do. Like when people say, just call me if you ever need anything. And you're just sitting there going like, I don't know what I need. Like, I don't even know if I need a shower right now. I don't even, I don't even know how I feel. So how do you expect me to pick up the phone and say, actually, it would be really great if you cleaned my house and make me feel a little bit better because I
Yeah,
feel like a
yeah.
mess, right?
Especially if you're a person that's so capable and never ever asks and is often the person doing that for someone else, then that's like a lobotomy.
I agree. I 100% agree.
So I think that, all of the doers, the ladies out there that are running their life like that, we got to be careful that we don't be hard on ourselves, that then now we need to be shaming ourselves about not asking to receive. Like we also are grieving. There's a lot going on that I think as well, then to ask you to completely change your personality is a pretty big ask in the face of what you've experienced. And so in that time you gained support, there was some context and at least some kind of clarity that was starting to appear, as devastating as I'm sure it was. What was the process that you went through to, I don't want to say move through that, but take steps out of the acute stage and into more of a restoration? Like when we say, we talk about this a bit on the podcast, but we speak a lot about it in our group therapy program, that we use the dual processing model of grief. And so essentially restoration means you start to move into your everyday life. It doesn't mean you're not grieving, but you start to take steps into what once appeared as more of a, inverted commas, normal kind of everyday life. Take us through what was going on for you as you were doing that. Were you keeping face but inside feeling something different, or did you feel like there were steps that you took that helped you integrate the two, grief and real life?
It's a really good question. And I sometimes wonder how I actually ended up surviving because it was such an immense amount of pain. And I'm sure a lot of listeners completely empathize with that pain. But like, I think I was, again, fortunate to a degree. I want to be very clear, to a degree, that I had a relatively responsive workplace. So when I reached out to them to let them know what happened, they were like, whatever flexible working we need to organize, like we will organize, but right now just don't think about it. So at that point, I kind of said to them, like, I don't know if I can be going to be ready for work. And they kind of they explained to me the parental leave situation, like I won't be able to be eligible for it because I was 2 weeks before it being considered a stillbirth. And you can imagine the infuriation that I experienced from that, but that's a separate conversation. But they were saying to me, like, these are your options, this is what you can do. And I ended up returning back on a part-time basis for a couple of, I think it was about a month and a half. And it was hard. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that it was like, oh, and then I got back in and everything was great again. No, I had to do a lot of that, like you were saying, save face, and just kind of slowly get myself back into a normal routine. I really, really wanted to just not return back to life. I can't tell you enough how much I just wanted to wallow and not go back to normal life. Because if I go back to normal life, is that a sign of me forgetting my baby that I just lost? It felt like it at the stage. Like, at that time, it really felt like if I move on, that, like, his life meant nothing. And, it still means something even though I've moved on, right? Like, I guess moved on is not the right word. I think acceptance. I've accepted what's happened, and it kills me, but I'm okay.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest misconceptions around grief in that if we move or we do, that we've stopped. And I think that's why we use the particular model of like grief theory that we do in our group therapy sessions and in the organization, because it's so unique to this experience, because a lot of the loss and grief can be very invisible, in that you might have been showing but nobody really met your baby. There isn't this kind of connected grief in that people are grieving for you or on your behalf, but they didn't necessarily have their own relationship with this little bubba. So, when we move through life, then it not only can feel like that because, as you say, you're doing and you're putting your steps forward, but when you move through life, no one else is remembering because no one met him. So I think there is this really unfortunate idea around the movement of a person in grief to suggest that it means that it stopped, because I feel like no, and I think that's probably the hardest thing for many women and many people grieving that go through this, that have to realistically even pay the bills or move through whatever they need to do, potentially even for some looking after other children. Like it's yeah, the movement and the process, and as we call it, the restorative version of grief, is a form of grief. And as a society, we just don't have that education, unfortunately.
I I think when I've become quite obsessive with this concept of like grief, and why is it so different to normal grief that we experience when we see like I don't want to go into something morbid, but I mean death is around us all the time. So why is it so hard for people to support people that go through miscarriage or any of the sort that we've all experienced here on the podcast? But um, and I've did this research, and it's funny because the grief itself, and it's kind of given me some comfort in some strange way. I think it's going to take some time for maybe some people or some listeners to really understand the comfort that I find from this study. But the grief is my connection to my son. Without the grief, is he like he isn't here? If that makes sense. So
What did he stand for?
I think like the grief in itself reminds me that he was alive and he was so special to me. I wouldn't be grieving for something that meant nothing, right? Like he lived and only experienced love, and he experienced so much love. Like between me and my husband, we were very lucky to have him in our lives for 18 short weeks. We got to live like he lived for 18 weeks, and I wish it could be longer. Oh God, I wish I could be longer. I would trade everything that I have for it to be longer, but he lived and he's there. And I think the other harder part about it is I felt like a parent after losing my son. I really did feel like a parent, but there was no acknowledgement that I was a parent. There was a lot of comments like, "Oh, don't worry, you're still young. Like you'll have a baby soon. Like you'll just fall pregnant again," diminishing the fact that it was really hard to fall pregnant in the first place. Or like, "Well, you got pregnant the first time, so you'll just go fall pregnant again." And it's just sometimes I think a lot of people just don't know what to say when it comes to this sort of grief. They try and make light of it or make it less uncomfortable by making comments that try and make things feel a bit better. And I don't know whether they reflect back on it and say, "Oh, I shouldn't have maybe said that." But I don't know. There's this innateness in everybody that they want to say something to make people feel better. When really silence and a hug and say, "I'm really here for you," and "I'm sorry" is all you need to hear.
It's true. And I think, to your point, there is a very big discomfort with death as a society. And then you add death with babies, and then you add death that people can't see. There are all of these challenges in front of us, which is why you sharing your story and us doing this work is important, because these things are happening. They happened to you and they're happening to many. So, off the back of the fertility journey, and then experiencing this and what some people kind of understand termination for medical reasons to be, there is, I guess, a very difficult conversation around the word. And this isn't a word that I'm choosing, I'm just putting the word into the conversation for you to speak to it. But the word choice is often kind of put into this conversation. So you've just gone through years of not being able to fall pregnant. And then apparently, in inverted commas, you have a choice to make when it comes to your baby. And you did mention quality of life, but it is an interesting term. And I wanted to ask how you've grappled with that word and how that may have started or changed for you over the years.
It's a really good question, and I think it varies between individuals. But I mean, you've asked me, so I can definitely give my opinion. I think, firstly, like, like what you're insinuating, I felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt like, especially when when we met with the sonographer to provide us the final report about what the prognosis was for our son, he explained to us the likelihood of it happening was like a shark attack. Like, it's very, very, very small amount of chance of it ever happening. But we were the very like, I don't want to say lucky ones, but we were like the very, very unlucky that received that particular prognosis. Um, and he said to us, like, you can see whether the pregnancy continues, but to be very frank, it's, I think he said, a 20% chance of survival, and with that 20% chance, the quality of life is minimal. And I don't know, he said it was more likely that he would pass, and it wouldn't be a very pleasant experience for him, because eventually, like, the he would be severely disabled, because obviously there would be no room in the womb, and his limbs will start to kind of curl and stuff, so he would just sort of be crushed by my body. um so I personally thought, I really didn't feel like I had a choice. So I
Well, it sounds like torture, doesn't it, when you put it like that?
we Yeah, and I mean, like I said previously, like, I can't believe how rational I was throughout that experience. Mind you, I cried the whole time. There's no denying that I wasn't sad. But the rationality of, like, no, this decision that we're making of, like, terminating because of medical reasons is the right decision, even though we kind of predicted, like, this would have been the scenario, but in 3 weeks' time, but more horrific because we have to rush to the hospital, like, this way. And I don't know whether other people can um, aligned to this, but, like, I'm a relatively a bit of a control freak. Like, I need to be able to manage what's happening, and I thought this is the best way for us to be able to manage this situation, where we're safe in a hospital. We've got our OB observing me every day and making sure that I was safe, because I think I forgot that there was a risk of my life at that point as well. Like, my focus was on my son. My husband was really scared about my life, to be honest. He was really scared that the infection might become something much worse, and I might have something really terrible, where I might have a very terrible quality of life, if that makes sense.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. No one should have to do that. And it is one of those elements that can be a very much of a compound grief because of the fertility. Can you speak to that at all?
Goodness, I think that's a really good point. Because by that point, once we got pregnant, I was very um, desensitized to the medical system. Like, I was very used to being prodded and poked and told medical terms, and I really want to, send a lot of love to the poor people that have no experience in the medical world before having to experience this, because you just don't, like, the insensitivity in the conversations that you have with medical practitioners can sometimes be heartbreaking. um, you know Concepts like pregnancy tissue, like, no acknowledgement that that's your baby, is honestly heartbreaking. And I don't want to say that, we were fortunate because we went through fertility experience and, like, we've gotten used to the language. No one should be experiencing that. But I think at that stage, going through as many as we did, we were relatively desensitized to the language. So the words weren't as sharp as what it could have been if you were just experiencing this off the back of just having a normal pregnancy, conceiving naturally, and then getting told all these medical jargon terms that you just don't understand. You kind of want to tell people to stop talking. I don't understand what's happening right now. Um, but you just get that, constant talking, and because they've got to rush off to the next patient, you just don't know what's going on. But back to your question about fertility journey, like I think I honestly thought, look, I mean, we fell pregnant the second round of IVF, so I thought, look, that's not terrible. It's not great. It would have been great for the first time, but we fell pregnant the second time round. Like we should be able to fall pregnant again. We've got some. Oh, actually, at that point we had none on frozen, so we'd have to go through a fresh transfer again. I had a terrible. We weren't being able to make embryos at that point, so like we had to go through a lot of investigation after this pregnancy. Um, but in the end, I was like, well, I fell pregnant, and I trusted what the doctors kept saying. Like, if you fell pregnant this time, you should fall pregnant again. And I think that was a bit of a thing that kept my mind focused. Like, I want to get pregnant, so I'm just going to keep going down this track. And I'm very task focused, so a little bit of the emotions pushed back. So I was really glad that I was supported by a psychologist to remind me these emotions will catch up on me, and I need to acknowledge them at the very least, and then start processing them when I'm ready. So going through IVF and stuff like that, my process was, okay, now that I've gone through this terrible experience, let's go and do this. Let's Once my body's healed, let's move into it. And I remember just calling my fertility specialist, being like, when can I do this? Like, when's the fastest I can do it? And he's like, you should take some time for your body to recover. And I was like, no, 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 my body's recovered. Let's just do this. And he's like, let's do 4 months. Let's wait 4 months. And then I went through, like, I had a 2 month protocol, so they would go through that process. So it was 6 months post my previous pregnant, before the loss, sorry. And then I remember I fell pregnant and I was in denial. I was like, how did that happen? Oh my God, I'm pregnant. That's amazing. And I remember someone at work also was pregnant as well. So we're like, oh my God, we might have the same due date. How exciting. And she went through IVF as well, and we were very excited. And I remember going to that appointment, and we actually had the appointment on the same day to check the heartbeat. And she went and she's like, beautiful heartbeat. We took a recording of my husband's face. Well, they saw the heartbeat. It was very exciting. Oh my God, you should do the same thing. And I remember telling my husband, take a video, take a video. And we have a video of us devastated because actually there was no heartbeat, which I've now deleted, of course. But it was horrific. It was horrific, thinking like, okay, that was what happened? What? Sorry, you said I was pregnant though. So what happened? Sorry, this can't happen again. Like we had the miscarriage. Now we're on to the next pregnancy, so this should be fine now. And then yeah, it was not until the 8th round where I successfully fell pregnant, um, and had my rainbow baby with a lot of anxiety, as you can imagine.
Oh, I can. And I know it. I know that anxiety. I can't, even if you have similar experiences, there's just nothing that takes you to that moment, especially when with fertility, I think, well, from my experience, you put so much hard work in, and there's something in you that even if you don't want it there, it's like you deserve. And we all feel we deserve our babies. Like, of course, that's what we're doing. But when you then move into financial and kind of the depths of your body and your emotional, your relationship, everything, your social world goes upside down, the 9 a.m. blood test, you do all of this, and then you find out you're pregnant and it's not happening after. I mean, the reoccurring loss has its own level and its own experience. But when you think about reoccurring loss in that way, and that moment, what was that moment? What was your mind? What was coming up other than this can't be, this can't be? Like, what were the depths? What was this kind of the secret thoughts that you had then?
Um, I did a lot of exploration on my personal values at this point, and I realized the reason why I just couldn't get over, and I think like everybody wouldn't be able to get over this, so I don't want to dismiss the fact that it's a problem that everybody would experience. But I
Everyone
had a
has
core
their
value of,
own big thing. Yeah.
of course, no, completely. But I had a core value of justice, which I didn't realize I had. And I just thought, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. And you always refer it to the worst case scenario. Like, how can these crack people have like babies, like 6 or 7 babies, and they neglect them? And I want to give my baby everything, and you're not letting me have a baby? What's going on? This is not fair. How could there be any sort of fairness in the world if I am working as hard as I am and I'm not getting a baby? And then you have like, and then you become quite resentful. I remember friends falling pregnant. I was like, how'd they get pregnant? Like, they didn't even try. They just fell pregnant. That's not fair, right? And so I can't say, like, I don't know. I'm very lucky that my friends completely understood, but I was really resentful and upset all the time. And um, like, I remember there was one time close friends of ours let us know, and they did it like they didn't realize. I don't know what they were thinking, to be very frank, but they announced their pregnancy at a big group setting, and I tried really hard to keep it together, and said, "I'm so happy for you guys." Gave them a big hug and said, "Like, I'm so happy for you." And I remember running to the bathroom and having a bit of a cry, composing myself, and then got back in. And she came over to me and said, "Oh, you didn't see the ultrasound photo. Let me show you the ultrasound photo." And I lost my banana. Like, I never seen this behavior from me. I'm normally quite composed and I've got myself kind of figured out. But I remember I just lost my bananas to the point that everybody in the cohort, like everybody at the party, didn't know I went through what I went through. And they all found out because I lost my bananas, didn't I? Um, yeah, so I don't even know what I was talking, like, what was my point there?
Well, we were just talking about the reality, I guess. Like I was asking what were your secret thoughts when with everything coming up, and you kind of came back to this injustice, really essentially being the big thing that obviously then kind of started to fuel into that moment, but then further on into your life, I'm gathering.
Mm, mm. And look, like, I think when you go through as many fertility rounds as you do, like, we went to 8, and my husband and I had to have a very serious conversation about, are we gonna have a baby? Are we gonna have to look at different avenues, or, like, what's our plan here? Because we can't keep, like you said, there's a financial burden when it comes to IVF. It'd be really great if it could be supported more so from a government point of view, but it is whatever it is. Um, but it was chunking away from all our life savings. Like, we were working really hard to be able to try and do this as much as we can until we had our baby. I remember us on the 8th round, like, we paid for it and we said, okay, this is the final round. I don't know whether we would have actually committed to that, but we kind of said, this is the final round. We can't afford anything more. Like, let's put everything into it and hope for the best. And we were fortunate, but I know many people, and I've heard of very many stories where it just doesn't happen. And, they become childless, not by choice. And I remember I read a lot of blogs because I thought I'd be in that space. And I thank my lucky stars that, I managed to have a baby, but there is the reality that it may have not happened for us either. Like, it's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And I think when you talk about, when you were saying earlier that you felt like as a person you do feel comfortable, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but comfortable, or at least more yourself with a bit of control. And I can't really imagine that lack of control around your life and what it then starts to have you question, because as you mentioned with the injustice, I know for many it's like a religious or spiritual questioning. It's very existential, and existential doesn't just have to mean life or death. It really does start to open up the way you look at things. Relationships break down. So much can happen from this experience. So yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that you did meet your rainbow baby. However, can you tell us a little bit about them?
Of course. He's absolutely precious. He is 21 months in the next couple of days. So he is a ball of energy, and I feel very fortunate to be his mum. And I do acknowledge our little babies that we lost as well. I let him know about his big brother. I should say little. He's a little big brother. Actually, his favorite toy is his big brother's toy. It's a little comforter that someone gifted us just when we did the gender reveal. And so it's a very important toy, not only for him, but it's a very important toy for us as well. And he's just a happy baby. And um, I don't think he'll ever understand what we went through. And I don't ever want him to understand it, because I never want him to see the grief and the sadness that we experienced. But I hope he feels the love and the absolute gratefulness that we have, that he's in our lives, because he's helped us so much.
Mm. And so now with your time, you work as a peer support coordinator. How did that come about?
It's interesting actually because I knew I wanted to do something in this space after going back to work and realizing I felt like no purpose doing what I was doing at work. And like you said, there was a lot of accident. I can never pronounce that word. Hold on, I might re-say this whole thing. How do you say it? Accident? Oh, I'm not going to try and repeat it, but you have that crisis, right? Where you turn around and realize, okay, um, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I'm not here to generate profits for an organization. I honestly thought I was doing work to help people. I work in like organizational development and change management. So it's all about getting people on board about a change. But I was realizing I'm doing this for an organization to make them make more profits and make people more compliant. What am I doing with my life? And I kind of reassessed and decided, okay, I'm going to do something more important. I'm going to actually do something that fulfills a big gap in my life where I want to support people who went through what we went through. And at that point, like I don't know what I was thinking, because I know my psychologists were recommending like there's the Pink Elephants community, there's Bears of Hope, there's a lot of different groups that you can reach out to for support. And I just kept thinking like I've got my psychologist, I've got this, like I don't need any other support. But I really wish I leverage the support, because now that I'm in the support group and actually support other women, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had someone like this on the other end of the line, just
Me
being my
too.
side.
And yeah, and I was working for Pink Elephants, like, doing just advocacy work in media, or, I knew Sam very well personally, and still she was like, I know you have a lot of support. I know you're on this, but I wish for pregnancy after loss I had have leaned into. I think that was me personally, where I was like, yeah, sometimes we do know and we still don't, and there's many reasons for that as well. But I think it is an interesting point, because if you are listening and you haven't experienced some of the supports that are there, it is worth having a go and pull out, or don't, just leave it if it doesn't work for you. But I think from just, Samantha and my experience, we both wish now working in it that we maybe had have found a way to kind of give it a crack, because I think that peer support, even in the group therapy, which is different to what you offer, I see the benefit of people hearing their story in someone else's, and it's evidence based, like it's an intervention. It's not just like a, kind of, oh, how lovely women like to talk. It works. It actually works.
Well
It's
said. Well
therapeutic.
said. Yeah,
It's therapeutic.
you think to yourself like, oh, look, I'm just gonna message this person, and it's funny because like when I'm actually chatting to women, they're like, where are you? Are you in a chat, like a call center? I'm like, no, I'm on my lounge and I'm just watching some TV on the end, like, and I'm just waiting for you to respond. I'm just talking to you. All my energy's on you, and I'm happy to stay as long as you want. And when they start to realize, oh wait, there's an actual human, and they've actually experienced what I've experienced, it's quite there's a lot of appreciation for it. And I think I do want to acknowledge that it is like a big brave step to go, okay, I'm going to go on this live chat and give it a go. But I really want to, kind of challenge everybody who is listening. Like, what's the harm in trying? It might not work for you. You might hate it. It might not be the right person. Who knows? But I mean, every person I've had the privilege to talk to acknowledge how supportive it is to actually have someone on the other end of this live chat function to say, I get it and it sucks.
Oh, I mean, totally. And I think I want to add to your very poignant note there. You do not have, like, I think we have this idea, someone before me, or I'm doing okay. I've got a therapist. I've got a mum that's calling and bringing me food. Like, there's people worse than me, or I'm not anxious, or I've never suffered from depression. All of these caveats that we're apparently supposed to hit in order to receive help. You don't need to receive help for any other reason than the fact that you lost your baby. That's it. There's no other caveat. And you can be feeling completely fine the next day and going to work. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy of that support, because you might be doing okay. And vice versa. If you feel like you can't get the words out, then don't get the words out, but maybe do it with someone on the other end. So there isn't a caveat of the way you're supposed to show up here. Just show up if you've lost your baby. That's it. That's the only That's the only connector. Maybe people will try and find you to say that they've loved you on the podcast. No, the main connector to find Samantha and peer support is because, unfortunately, for the very reason that we're here. And I wanted to just, acknowledge, as I continue to be in awe of, is that you do sit on the couch and do that. I think those elements that you say in that very relaxed sense can also, I suppose, simplify the very big thing that you do as a volunteer. And I always point this out, like, we have lots of people on Pink Elephants, even on the board. I've interviewed people on our show, and I always make a point that people are doing this with no mullah. Like, this is because people care. And I think that it isn't to say to people that they need to be necessarily put on a pedestal. It's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm saying it gives you the idea of how much people value. There is no, there isn't, it's not a monetary exchange for many people. It is a core value. It's a wanting to give, a wanting to be there. So the service is very much there from people just like you, just like that. So, it's amazing what you do.
And equally, I want to invite, and I can only assume that there may be some listeners out there that are actually supporting someone who's experienced loss. And I really encourage to leverage the service to get some support for, the person that you know. We get, like, sometimes we get a couple of chats here and there, of a mum wanting to understand how they can support their daughter or their son who's gone through a loss. There's other times where we've had best friends or, even a workplace, just kind of chat to us to say, I don't know how to support my employee. It's a service, and, like, we can't give, like, medical advice or anything like that, but what we can give is, lived experience and, informed advice. We can say, for us, and every person's different, but for us, this is what we would have loved. Cooking us dinner, not getting us to think, helping us around the house, making our lives as much easier as possible, rather than, I don't know, giving us some interesting comments.
Yeah, yeah, or avoiding, or losing eye contact, or not writing back to the text. You don't know what to say. I think it's a really interesting point when you say the home cooked meal, because I want everyone listening as well to take on board that point, in that it's a lived experience response too. Like, we understand as a community and as an organization just how much that clinical lingo can be grating and challenging. And there is a reason why so many people that join the support groups and the support teams are people with lived experience, because we understand what the language, we would have wanted the language to be, but also the realities. Like, sure, we have a very strong clinical aspect to our research and everything that we do, but at the core of it, we're all humans that understand a human experience in its depths. And that, therefore, a lot of the time that will come across, we hope, in the way that we serve, because that is essentially the, I guess, anecdote to what often a very medicalized, sterile environment can be in this space. So we try and offer the other side as much as possible. So you will get support, but you'll get, as Samantha says, human ideas, humans saying to another human what potentially would be a nice connection point, or a supportive suggestion that comes from that place, and that stuff matters so much. Thank you so, so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you for sharing with me. I know that you didn't think the tears would come, but thank you for allowing them. Thank you for having a laugh as well, because often this can be tricky, even if you've shared the story many times and do work in the space. And I really appreciate your time and all of the work that you do. So thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, what an honor. I feel, like I said at the start, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to be there to support people, and I feel like my story needs to be shared so other people can have empathy when it comes to hearing other people that go through this experience, and they can kind of go, okay, I get it now. I need to support my friend or my whoever because of what they've experienced.
Off the back of that, I know we're just wrapping up, but if there was anything, I want to say that because you've said this a few times, if there was one thing you would suggest a friend to do for a friend that is going through a loss like yours, what would you suggest they do?
Oh God, you're giving me one thing. Can I give you two things? I'm going to give you
Yes.
two very quick things. The first thing is, sit there, don't say a word. Oh, sorry. Okay, let me start again, actually. Sit there, hug them, and say, I am so sorry, and I acknowledge that this is really hard. I can't believe it already impacted me just saying that, And the other part is, don't ask me how you can help me. Just do something, Don't ask if there's any way I can help. Of course I'm going to say I don't know. Like, I don't even know how to help myself at this point, but I think go get a pizza and drop it off at their door. They might not want to see you. Just drop it at their door saying, I know you might be hungry, just take it. Or barge into the house and do the laundry. Just acts of love, I think, is really important.
I love that. Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
No problems.
Today's episode may have brought up some feelings that you need some extra support around, and that's totally okay. Head to pinkelephants.org.au to access our circle of support, your space where you can be met with empathy and support through all of your experiences of early pregnancy loss. We're here for you. You're not alone.